ABC News throws journalistic integrity out the window. The White House plans to take over one of its prime time broadcasts next week. American panel and much more. Hannity starts right now. President Obama's love affair with the mainstream media continues, but as we learn more about next week's Mickey Mouse-sponsored infomercial, one thing is becoming clear, and that is our headline this Wednesday night: journalism in America is dead. Now, it's bad enough that the White House is taking over a broadcast network for a full hour, but we were also reminded today that the White House Director of Communications for Healthcare Spin is none other than former ABC correspondent Linda Douglas. Now, that cannot be a coincidence. We also learned that ABC has declined a request by a conservative healthcare group to buy ad time during the infomercial. Now, the group says that at the very least they had hoped that ABC would let the other side pay for airtime, but nope, apparently Mickey was not interested. And joining me tonight with more is Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Karl, it seems rather unprecedented. You were there in the White House for the better part of 8 years. This ever happened while George W. Bush was president?
You know, look, it's normal for the networks to want to come in and do an interview inside the White House or to get a glimpse behind the curtain as to what goes on there. But let's step back for a minute. This is an unprecedented access to the White House and, more importantly, an unprecedented use of the White House. I can't remember a time when a network came in and was going to devote a significant block of time to covering an issue that was on the president's agenda. And it's a brilliant use of the White House by the Obamaites because it is, you know, they could put a dozen critics in the audience and the president's still going to win the evening and win the debate because he's playing on the ultimate home court in the East Room of the White House with all the power of the presidency, with all the majesty of the White House. And this is going to be a big sort of PR victory for him that night. However, there are going to be two losers in this thing. One is going to be the network, and ultimately one is going to be the White House itself. I'm astonished at ABC, and I don't think the White House has thought through the implications of what it's doing either.
Well, the National Republican Committee has requested, and President Obama has requested also, he wants a robust, vigorous debate. So the question is, why won't they at least allow a Republican that is well-versed on the issue to be there to counter some of the arguments that are being made, number one, and why not let this group buy ads?
Well, this is why ABC is a loser, because no matter what happens now, people are going to look at the critics of the president's health care approach are going to look at this and say this was a fixed deal. You put it on his home court. You controlled it. This was all made for glorification of the president of the United States. And look, ABC ought to be doing more, but even if they were doing these things, at the end of the day, the American people would be legitimate to look at this thing and say, you know what, the fix was in right from the get-go. And as a result, ABC's journalistic credibility is going to be hurt. But you know, the Obama White House is going to pay a price for this as well, and that is they're devaluing this venue. I mean, think about the uses of the White House before for addresses to the country. It was during declarations of war or national emergencies. And now it's going to be used as if it were a PR backdrop for a town hall meeting for the president to push, you know, one of his agenda points. No administration that I'm aware of in recent years has been able to use the White House in a similar fashion for an element of what it wanted to achieve. You know, sure, there's been signing ceremonies on bills and so forth, but this is an unprecedented use of the White House, and it may ultimately devalue the White House and make it look less majestic and more small and less presidential and more political.
Well, Karl, when we look at the actual numbers, and I know a lot of people say, well, these numbers get confusing, but the CBO is pretty much, and has been traditionally, they've marked up this bill and they've looked at it, and they're the gold standard, and it's nonpartisan, right. And they have determined that this is going to cost the taxpayers at least $1 trillion. Bloomberg says $600 billion in tax increases. 36 million Americans will still remain uninsured, and 23 million Americans will literally have to give up. They'll be forced to give up the insurance they currently have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sean, let me correct you a little bit. It's not the Kennedy bill is not the administration's bill. The Kennedy bill, first of all, the CBO scored one title. That it means to say one section of the Kennedy bill at being $1 trillion over 10 years. But we haven't seen the rest of the Kennedy bill. That's not the administration's approach. I'm writing about this tomorrow in the Wall Street Journal. The administration is working with Senate Finance Committee Chairman Max Baucus of Montana, and today the reports were that the draft of that bill is at $1.6 trillion, according to the own internal numbers of the Senate Finance Committee.
Right.
So that bill is $600 billion more than Senator Kennedy's bill. So it's even bigger than we think. And
well, let me follow up on that, because look, first of all, the Hill had an article today that Obama's bungling the rollout of health care. Max Baucus, when he looked at the numbers, he actually came out with a quote and said that they need to go back to the drawing board. And Max Baucus, and you're right in everything you're saying, he's talking about $600 billion in cuts in this before it even gets started, and they're going to delay, giving this to the American people.
Yeah. Well, look, it's getting complicated. They announced today as well that they were going to delay the public introduction discussion of this bill in committee until after the 4th of July, which makes it highly unlikely that if the Senate Finance Committee is not going to begin public discussion of this bill until after the 4th of July, that they cannot get this done before the August recess, which is what President Obama wanted to do. Rush it through in a hurry. Don't give people a chance to look at it. The second thing is, if you've got a bill that is $1.6 trillion, according to the Senate Finance staff, I bet when the CBO finishes looking at it, the number's somewhat higher, and it is hard to cut out 40% of your bill, your cost to your bill, without making major changes that are going to put more people at war with each other. Look, the fact of the matter is, you cannot take a bill that is this expensive, this big, this radical, this dangerous, this problematic for the American economy, and try and rush it through without all of these things causing even the most devoted advocates of nationalizing health care to sort of take a deep breath and say, are we doing the right thing?
Well,